Not gonna make that mistake again. Like a noob.
Yeah. We all know that you have one job and sometimes you can't do it. I didn't even look in the mirror before we started recording this.
It's okay because do you remember the name of this podcast?
Welcome back to another episode of Tuxedo Time where we were tuxedos and it is time podcast edition.
Off airport helicopter landing edition?
Yeah. I was going to say matching tuxedos edition.
Yes, we were wearing, well, they're sort of matching.
They're top and bottom matching.
We are matching within ourselves, but you are more of a forest green, an olive green. What's the
pine? This is a pine, and you're sage.
And I'm sage.
Here's the thing: there's been a trend over the last couple of weeks that people are kind of mad that we're starting to look the same. It's like, oh my God, Chris, cut your hair. You look like Becky. Or, oh, I thought that Becky was interviewing brown-haired Becky. Or like whatever. It's like, guys, let people have whatever hair they want to have and let us wear matching clothes. Jesus.
We're festoons, honey. We're festoons. Yeah. So for the people who are not watching this on YouTube,
yes,
or people who are listening to this, could you give a description of what we're wearing?
First of all, let's disclose. Today's podcast is sponsored by Cuts. And I was so excited because they just rolled out with Sunday sweatpants. Mm-hmm. And I was like, please send me your finest matching one-piece pine jogging suit.
And today is Sunday, and we're wearing the
matching
Sunday sweatpants with the matching hoodie.
I have wanted a matching hoodie and sweatpants combo for years.
That was like nicely fitted?
That was nicely fitted. That was comfortable. And Chris has on a sage sweatsuit. It's the same one, just a size down. And the color is kind of like gray with like...
It's sage.
It's sage. It's like gray, but somebody yelled green from the other room.
Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah. So thank you, Cuts, for sponsoring today's episode. With our link, you can get 30% off until December 3rd. They're having like a bit of a Black Friday sale. And then if you're listening to this or watching it and it's after December 3rd, you can still get 15% off with our link, which is in the description box of the podcast and the video. Cuts has been a supporter of us for a number of months now. We love their stuff. They have beautiful sweatpants, hoodies, long sleeves, t-shirts. I'm like just living in their t-shirts all the time.
And they make me look like I work out, but I don't work out.
It's true. It's true.
All right. So with that said, what is today's episode about?
Well, today we're going to be talking a little bit about how the art of the phone call, kind of. We're going to be talking about
call. That's a good teaser line.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about off airport helicopter landings and how
they relate to the telephone.
Yeah.
Okay.
The lost art of the phone call.
The lost art of the phone call and how that relates to off-airport helicopter landings.
I just want to preface this by saying, if you ever watch our main YouTube channel, which is linked wherever, in the description box, in the show notes, in the episode, whatever, anything that like crazy or nuts that happens on our main YouTube channel, like there's a 9 out of 10 chance that happened because Chris picked up the phone and called somebody. Is that not true?
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't it?
That is true.
Yeah.
Okay, so like just expounding upon that a little bit.
Yeah.
What are some crazy things that have happened to our YouTube channel?
Well, first, here's the first thing. I guess this isn't really a phone call, but the whole reason why we met Peter McKinnon was because you didn't give a shit and just straight up asked somebody if we could go somewhere with them, and they say yes.
Yeah, that was... Did I call Trevin or did I text him?
You texted Trevin.
Yeah, Trevin, who was did a lot of filming for Brad Friesen, who's also a helicopter pilot in Vancouver. We met Brad as well as Trevin
while we were living in
Vancouver.
While we were
in Vancouver. And then I think Pete was coming in to do a collab with Brad, and then Trevin was, of course, filming. And then I just kind of like shot my shot.
Yeah, you just texted Trevin out of nowhere. You didn't even tell me, and you were just like, hey, just so you know, like if you need an extra filmer or need a hand filming your video, like Becky's around if you need help.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we're good. We're fully whatever, good, but we're going to be at this bar tomorrow night or tonight, whenever it was. And
it was like, that night.
It was that night. And he was like, if you guys want to come down and like meet up with us for a drink, you're more than welcome.
I think he was like, we're still up in the mountains or we're still away, but we're going to be home later tonight. And we're going to go out for a drink. So meet us at this bar at like, it was like, I think he said at 10 and then it was like, oh, we're running late. Then it was 11. Then it was 11:30. And I'm like, I have to go to work tomorrow at like 5.
Oh, we went anyway.
Yeah, it is. And then that's how it blossomed into a beautiful friendship.
Yeah.
And we're still in touch with, I haven't talked to Trevin in a while.
Yeah.
But I don't know what he's doing now. but we're still in contact with Brad. We still obviously talk to Pete.
Yeah.
And it just blossomed into a gorgeous friendship.
Yeah. The second thing that I can recall off the top of my head that happened because you phone called somebody was the entire like Catskills 3-part vlog where we like landed at that dude's house and then like took him for a ride and then like he gave us his car for the weekend.
Yes, we will link to all
that
of
will
those
be in the
videos
show notes.
in the show notes or in the cards if this is on YouTube.
BeckyandChris.com/podcast episode 29.
So yeah, that's a good point too. Really, any of the helicopter stuff.
Because as you guys may or may not know, you probably know because I've said this a million times in the podcast, but I do most of the things here. Like I produce the videos, I plan the videos, I edit the videos, I do all the social media, I do all the
I'm just responsible for the wacky adventures.
Yeah, so when it comes to like helicopter videos, I can't really plan. I can say, here's the idea, but
here's the itinerary.
Logistics. Yeah, but the logistics, like I can't plan it.
Although you found Basin Harbor.
I found most of the spots here.
You were like, I found a resort that has an airstrip.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
And I also found all of the airports that had like registered, or not registered, but like camping spots that had some facilities for camping that we never ended up going to.
Right. You found some good databases online, like for
did.
airport camping, which is like a thing all of its own.
Yeah. But a lot of the stuff like I can't really plan because it requires you calling people and then there's like questions that I can't answer. So
yes, and
that's when you come in and you don't give a shit. You will call people and not have anxiety and overthink about it like I do.
Oh, I don't care at all. I'll just call somebody.
I have a story for you before we get into this.
Okay.
I had to call the hair salon today to cancel my appointment because I have a shoot on the day of my haircut appointment.
Okay.
I bungled. Bungled is even a mild word. Bungled. Fucking bungled. 2-in-1.
My fat fingers.
Yeah, I bungled the message that I left. In the middle. I forgot what I was saying and I was like, wow, I forget what I was. Oh, I didn't have enough coffee. Well, if you want to call me, you can.
God, it's
or
making me so awkward.
I was like,
stop. It's making me awkward.
I was so awkward, Chris. I was just like, extra face palm. So Crown, if you got my message. Oh, please know that I was very embarrassed and don't judge me next time I come in for my haircut.
I don't think that Grace listens to this podcast.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think anybody from Crown listens to this podcast.
No.
But
if you do, shout out to you.
I was embarrassed.
So yeah, so speaking of, that's amazing.
I'm glad you weren't in the room. Notice how anytime I have to call somebody, I go to a different room.
You do, yeah.
Because I don't want you to listen to me.
Oh, I don't care. I don't care.
I know you give zero fucks.
So yeah, so when we are planning, when I'm trying to find places to land off airport in the helicopter, it's a bit difficult in New York State because, you know, just to give you context, in Canada, you know, most provinces have an abundance of crown land, which is basically just more or less, wilderness that you can do essentially whatever you want. So people are always landing. You know, when I trained did my flight training in Vancouver, you know, you flew like 5 minutes north and you're in the mountains, and it's just like nobody owns this land. This is just the country's land, and we just did flight training there, and that was it. But down south of the border here in the U.S. and in New York State particularly, every like square foot of land is either owned privately or it's protected through the state. There's not really any like free to use, do whatever the hell you want land. And that makes it difficult to kind of go on crazy adventures because it adds another layer of you have to now get permission to do this. So you're right off the bat, you're not going to get permission easily to do, to land on like parkland or like protected state land just because there's so much red tape. So that basically leaves private land and just hoping that people are cool with you proposing something. So what I usually do is I will look up public land surveys, and there are apps actually. I think Onyx, ONX. I think it's a hunting app. And I know that Trent Palmer has referenced as well. So Trent flies bush planes. He does very similar things, like looking up where people, like who owns what land. And this app kind of, it's a consolidated database where it searches all the like public land surveys that are available online. But every county has their own GIS system, which is like geographic information system, I think.
Don't ask me, man.
So
I don't know.
it's less graphics. You do graphic design.
Yeah, I do graphic design. You do graphic design.
So Onyx is like, it's a app that basically has like land surveys, and it shows the person's name. And it's just a matter of like, looking the person up in the white pages, in the phone book, which is online, using like, I have some other resources that I use too, kind of, my skip trace resources.
Yeah.
But more or less, if you can find someone's name and you know the location or the city, obviously because you've found their survey and you're going to try to land on their land, you can pretty much easily find their phone number. So I just call people out of the blue, and
you just say, hey.
I was like, hey.
Can I land a helicopter on your property?
I just say, hey, odd question. I got your name off of a public land survey. And because people are like, always wonder like, who the hell are you and how'd you get my number? So I just kind of say like, hey, look, yeah, I just got your name off some public land surveys. I know that you own, I just noticed that you own this land at whatever address. I'm a helicopter pilot. My wife and I do YouTube channels, and just looking for
YouTube channels.
Or we have a YouTube channel.
We do YouTube channels.
We do the YouTube.
We do the graphic design and the YouTube channels.
But you know what? That would blend in because most of the people you're calling are older.
Yeah.
Because statistically speaking, people who are boomers and above in age are going to own the majority of land, and therefore, and the majority of people who have landlines too.
Yeah.
So a lot of these are landlines that I'm calling because that's what's like listed in the white pages, I guess. So that's actually something that's going to probably change over the next generation, is that as more and more people abandon their landline, it's going to be harder to find people's cell phone numbers, because landlines are easy to find, but cell phone numbers are harder.
Right.
So we're in this golden era now where like I can pretty much, most of the land is owned by older people, and most older people have landlines that are you can easily find the numbers on the internet. So that's basically what we do. So I call the people, I say, hey, can we land on your land? And surprisingly, most people say yes.
Yeah.
There's
been a couple of people who have been like, no. And it's like a harsh no. And you don't care, but I'm like, oh, I hate listening to those. But yeah, like most people have been pretty cool. Like there's been a couple of instances where like, they're like, yes, right off the bat. Okay, sure. Or let me talk to my partner.
Yes.
Or sometimes there's like a little bit more information that's needed. Like, okay, well, like, can you give me more information? Can you put me on your insurance?
Yeah.
And then other times people straight up say no, and then you start opening up about your story, and they're like, oh, wait, the owner of this thing is from Newfoundland, and you're from Newfoundland. Wait, hang on.
Yeah,
and
so we got to do is you got to hook people into conversations, because oftentimes I end up speaking to these people for like
an hour.
Yeah, and I feel like, again, that's a generational thing, right? Like for you, you'd be like, oh my God, if some stranger called me and started talking to me, that would be a nightmare.
I wouldn't even pick up the phone.
No, exactly. You wouldn't pick the phone. Exactly.
Like, I don't pick up the phone.
But a lot of the people that I talk to,
unless
like
it's Suburban Pest Control. And then I pick up the phone.
You're in the Home Shield plan?
I'm on the Home Shield plan, man.
For all of our pests.
So important. Stink bug, mouse, ant.
And one of each. Just the three best friends.
Just three.
Yeah.
And wasp. And
wasp.
carpenter bee. All of them.
We have lots of pests.
I really love the Home Shield program.
And Becky. Anyway. Yeah. So most of the people I talk to, like, they're really nice people.
Yeah.
We just have a grand old conversation. You find out. And when you're friendly with people.
Yeah.
They're not going to, there's less chance they're going to say no.
They've been really sweet. Like, it almost makes me cry to think that, like, that some of the people were so nice to let us land. Like, for instance, on Heading East, when that couple let us land on their island in the Thousand Islands, and they were so sweet, and they gave us a full backstory on their island, which was actually so nice. I love learning about the history of these places that we get to land. Right?
Oh yeah, that was Lori. So I call Lori Curran and Pat Curran are the owners of that Stony Crest Island / Jewel Island, which is in the transitioning back to the name Jewel Island.
Right.
Yeah. So I called her up one evening, and she was just like, "Oh yeah, okay." And she was in the camp of let me give me some more information, because she was very curious. She's like, and then she was kind of thinking, you could almost hear her wheels turning. She was like, "Yeah, I'd have to run it by my husband Pat, because we both own it, but I think it's a cool project." And I really like, so she just emailed me, like, and I told her that, like, we did another, trips. I think I emailed her a link to our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, I'll check it out and I'll let you know. And she got back to me and she's like, oh, that's really fun adventure. I really would like to feature our island as part of one of your adventures.
That's so nice.
And the only thing for them was, they were worried about liability.
Yeah.
So I have a standard indemnification agreement that my lawyer has drafted up for us.
That we had from the Catskills project. Originally, yes.
Correct. Which ironically, because we were going to stay at the Den A-frame, and then they decided at the last minute, they're like, you know what, maybe this isn't really something we're interested in. But we had this agreement already drafted up. I was like, well, shit. But now it wasn't a waste because I could just basically fill in the blank, change the name of the people. So I used that, and then I filled that out for her and said, we won't be held liable for anything that happens that's related to this landing of this helicopter. Legal jargon. Signed, Christopher Nicholas the first. The only. No. So they said that was fine, but then she said, can you actually put us on your insurance? So that was the first time anybody's ever asked for us to do that. So I was like, I don't know, probably. So I emailed our insurance broker and she was like, yeah, we can do that. Just got to fill out some paperwork or whatever. So that was a little bit of extra jumping through some hoops, but at the end of the day, we got we dotted all of our I's, crossed all our T's, and that was the final landing and heading east.
Yeah, that was incredible.
And it was totally worth it.
Oh, 100%. What I loved about that landing was not only was it an island, but it was an island with a story. And it wasn't like we were just, we're landing on an island. It's like, we're landing on this island and here's the history of it.
Yeah. And that was 100% because Lori, after we got everything squared away with the paperwork and whatnot, she actually sent this big email with all of these, the story, the whole history of the island, which was amazing because I could basically just regurgitate that on our video.
Yeah.
And give some context to the island.
Well, it was so cool because while we were on the island, a man, the next morning had this canoe or something, and he canoed over and he was like, hey, what are you doing? Kind of just chatting. And he was like, yeah, there's a whole history about this island. And he went off and told us. And so there was some things that he told us that wasn't in Lori's story. Mm-hmm. But
I'm sure Lori just gave the abridged version.
She probably did. So he told me that there was, he was traveling somewhere in New York and went to some museum and there was paperwork and photos of what had happened to that island.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Documentation.
Yeah. So essentially for those of you guys who haven't seen the series yet, this island was a large island in the Thousand Islands region. And
yeah, the Thousand Islands region is in sort of upstate New York, and it borders Canada, and it's on the St. Lawrence Seaway. And so there's a lot of shipping channel. It's a shipping channel, essentially. So a lot of big container ships that go through that channel. And like you were saying, the island was bigger at one point.
It was bigger. Let me see if I remember all of the details. I'm trying to turn the heater off because I can hear it in the mics.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was bigger at one point, and it got sold to a couple of different people. And finally, I think the state took it over, and they blew up part of the island to widen the St. Lawrence Seaway. And so they put a bunch of dynamite in the rocks, and you can still apparently see some of the blast marks, but they blew away half the island and took down the house that was originally on the island. But when they blasted the island, this is what the guy told me. He said that the blast was so big that it took out the dock that was across the water, and he pointed out the property that the dock. And so the state had to rebuild the dock that they accidentally blew away.
It's like, I'm sorry,
on the other side of the canal.
But I blew up your dock. Imagine having to have that conversation.
So now this island is smaller than it was originally. There's no house on it or anything. It's just a mowed island with a dock around half of it and a shed.
It was a beautiful island.
It was stunning.
Manicured. In fact, I think
with a fire pit too.
I think Lori was saying that people just randomly dock on their island thinking it's a public park. Because there's no house on it.
Right.
There's no structures on it other than a shed. And it's just a beautiful dock, well manicured, landscaped with hydrangeas.
And there's power.
And a beautiful mowed lawn and then plugs, right?
Yeah.
So I think people think it's a public space.
Right.
But she's like, no, this is we had to put up, this is private property.
Yeah.
Because people would just dock and use it.
Right.
And then we were so she said she was actually going to come and try to visit us when we landed.
That would have been nice.
But I don't think they were able to make it out that night. But someone came up when we were pitching our tent. Someone kind of came up, and I just assumed it was them.
Yeah.
Because I've never met these people. I've talked to her on the phone.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So this guy gets out and his wife get out on the dock, and he was like, I was like, oh, hey. And I just like said hi, like as if like expecting it to be them.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, do you own this island? And I'm like,
no,
this
wait,
is not Pat and Lori.
No. But you know, people see the helicopter and they're in boats and they're like, what's going on? And they're intrigued and it's exciting.
Oh, he was stoked. Yeah.
He was stoked.
And most people who like boats are probably going to like helicopters just because they like mechanical toys.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like
things that go vroom.
That was such a perfect ending. Like I couldn't believe, especially like, you know, we landed on the island and it was a beautiful night. And it was a bit chilly, but like then there was no dew and it was like the perfect camping conditions and it was like comfortable and we knew there were no like bears gonna come eat us in the night.
Yeah.
And it was just so fantastic.
It was lovely. Lovely end of the trip.
Yeah. And so the other one I know this isn't really, well, we're in the Headingley set because everything's set up. We didn't want to move it back to the original podcast area, which we'll get back to shortly. But the other one from this trip in particular was Monhegan Island.
Yes.
So for those of you guys who haven't seen the series, who don't know the story behind that.
Also in episode 5.
In episode 5.
It's in the islands episode.
It is, yeah. We just made it one episode just for islands because they were in different states. So it just made sense. So so this one, Chris was looking on the map and he was kind of zooming in and he saw this little green dot on the map. And so he zoomed in. He was like in the middle of the ocean.
It was a VFR. It was a weather station reporting VFR. I was like, oh, there's a weather station just in the
middle of the ocean.
In the ocean. It's like, nope, that's an island.
Yeah. You can tell a story.
Yes. Well, you started. Why don't you keep going?
Yeah. So he zooms in. Remix. He zooms in on the map, and it's this little tiny island off the coast of Maine called Monhegan Island. And neither of us had ever heard of it before, but we were like, this looks interesting. And so I guess you found that there was a helipad there.
So there was 2 registered helipads on the island, actually. One of which was used for medevacs. And I've called medevac people before trying to get permission to land at like hospitals. They don't let you
because it's for emergencies.
Right. Yeah. No one wants to be liable for you hanging out on their helipad and parking there. And then all of a sudden they have an emergency and then they can't land or they land and then they have to impair their operation somehow because you're being a nuisance. So no one wants to deal with that. So no one lets us land on medevac helipads or hospital helipads yet. But the second helipad on the island was owned by Tom, who has basically a cottage there.
Yes.
And he doesn't fly himself, but he has a pilot, but he owns an R-44 as well. So he gave us permission to land at his helipad, but the person who was listed as the airport manager, because these helipads that are listed as official helipads on the chart sectionals for for aviation databases, they have to have like an airport manager and a phone number, a contact for the airport because they're registered essentially as aerodromes. And so I called that number and Chuck is his name. And Chuck told me initially, he was like, yeah, this is a private use only helipad. It's for the owner at his cottage basically. So he was like, but again, he's like, oh yeah, I also fly rotary wing. I flew an R-44 for a while. I was like, oh great, that's what we're flying. It's like, okay, so are you just kind of like, what are you coming for? I've never had anyone call and ask to use this random helipad. I was like, oh, we're kind of on like we're doing a multi-part travel series,
an excursion, if you will,
on our YouTube channel. And
our YouTube
we do YouTube.
We do the YouTube channels.
We do YouTube
and graphic design.
And he said, oh, have you done this before? And we told him about Cold Island where he flew back to Newfoundland. He's like, Newfoundland? I went on my honeymoon with Newfoundland. I was like, no way. He's like, yeah. And the owner, his family's from Newfoundland. I was like, holy crap. That's like such a coincidence. Yeah. He's like, you know what? I think that given this such a coincidence, I'm going to forward your name on to the owner. I'm pretty sure he'll call you back. So sure enough, made contact with Tom and he was like, yep, show up anytime. Just give me give me a 24 hours heads up just to make sure I can be there. I'll meet you there. And feel free to use it.
Yeah, he was so nice. It was so cool to like land there and he was like from Newfoundland and he had the bottle of Burgeo sand in the house. And even like in the morning, like the following morning that night we had to move our helicopter to the base pad, like that was down in the corner of his property because his pilot was coming in the next morning to pick him up.
Yeah. Because that actually was the original helipad, he said.
Yeah. So we moved it. And then the next morning we had to leave early because the wind was going to pick up. So we got up early in the morning, like 5 o'clock. We went down and shot sunrise around the shipwreck, which was like just down from his helipad. And we knew that his pilot was coming in around sunrise, around 6.
Yep.
And so we were down on the rocks while his pilot, like you could hear the rotors flapping, and around comes the red helicopter and, you know, flies in and lands. And it was so cool. Just like, you just to watch a helicopter that's the same as ours, like land there and pick him up, and like he's gone, he's waving, and we took a couple of pictures, and I don't know, I just thought that was like a really neat little experience.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
But that experience would never have happened even if you just texted somebody.
No, because you need to have that personal, like, mouth to mouth conversation.
Conversing with somebody is almost like interacting with them in person almost.
Yeah.
A lot more than text, say. Because text, you get a text and you won't even respond. You're like, what the fuck is this? I'm not gonna respond
you don't get personality in text. You don't know context.
But if you're just like nice and sound like a nice person when you're like, hey, just calling, you know, to ask, can we do this? This is our story. This is what we do.
Yeah.
And even being available like to, it's hard for people to say no when there's somebody on the other line.
I've heard people say no to you.
No.
Like, yeah, no, we're not interested. No, don't call. Okay. Don't need to be a dick. Just say
well,
no.
I mean, they can be a dick if they want.
I know.
Like, I don't hold against people, right? Like, I am literally taking their time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, whatever. But yeah, I mean, most people have some common decency. Do you have to sneeze?
Yes.
Is that why you have that face on?
Yes.
Is that your sneeze face? Look at light. Look at light, Becky.
It's gone.
Okay.
It's gone. Okay, sorry, continue.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, so that's basically how phone calls end up turning into our wacky adventures.
Yeah. Well,
don't discount the value of a phone call.
Yeah.
But don't call me.
Don't call me yet.
I hate it when people call me.
Same. Unless it's scheduled. Okay, if we scheduled a call, I know it's coming, so I can overthink and have anxiety about it for days.
I don't even think about twice about it. And even after you get off the phone with somebody, you like start second guessing everything you said.
Oh yeah, 100%. You?
No.
Oh, just me?
Just you. Yeah.
I see.
I see how it is.
Oh, I guess the house is really cold because the furnace came on again. Turned it down to 68.
I guess.
Yeah.
What was I going to say?
Catskill.
Oh yeah. So the other thing that we've done, not related to heading east, but the whole FAA thing.
Yeah, when we did the Niagara Falls flight.
So when COVID was in its peak, probably
it was back in
spring of 2020.
Yep, March or April, I think it was.
Yeah, it was like right when kind of COVID was just ramping up in the U.S.
It must have been the end of April.
And people were actually taking it seriously. We actually
people actually stayed inside.
Had stay at home orders and things like that.
Yep.
And I remember hearing that there was it's just like one day it clicked. I was like, wait a second, the helicopters are all grounded. The ones that constantly run circuits and tours over Niagara Falls in the restricted airspace. And there's from surface up to 3,500 feet over Niagara Falls, there is a permanent restricted airspace. So people, normies like me, who are just kind of general aviation, we can't just kind of, we're not allowed to fly into that airspace because it's for tours only. Like these tour helicopters are running circuits constantly, and it's a busy airspace. They know what they're doing as far as these prescribed routes, and they don't want random people flying in and just causing mayhem. So they have a permanent flight restricted airspace over Niagara Falls up to 3,500 feet above sea level. And then above that, you can fly normally. So I was thinking, you know what? I would love to be able to fly low over Niagara Falls. So then I called the FAA, hopped on the phone, talked to the FSDO in Rochester, and then they basically said, yeah, I think we can make that happen. And it was just, they had to do a lot of string pulling and there's again a lot of red tape. But the same as we were talking about, like landing in parks and stuff, you couldn't do it in most cases. But this, being the FAA, this was their job to organize things like this. So they had to coordinate with the Niagara State Park, and then I think there's a separate state park police or something. There's some police that patrol that area, I think, dedicated.
Didn't they have to bring it all the way up to Washington, D.C.?
They had to go to, yes, they had to bounce it off of their higher ups. And then once they got the okay from them, then they could arrange it with all these places. Then we arranged it with, then they called Buffalo Tower because they're the approach services that we deal with when we're on with air traffic control. That's the people we're talking to that hand us off to Niagara Falls.
Right.
In the sort of it's like a special what is it? What's it called again? Special Flight Rules, something like the SFRA, I think it's called. Anyway.
I do graphic design.
Yes, exactly. So they basically were involved as well. So it was a bunch of moving parts. We finally got it done. And then add weather is another variable.
Yeah.
So we finally got it done. We made it happen. We'll link to that video
in the show notes.
In the show notes.
That was epic flight.
Yeah, that was crazy.
You got a complaint filed against you, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though you went through all the proper things.
I did.
We have all of the footage proving that we did not cross the Canadian border.
The stipulation was that we had to stay, because that restricted airspace, just to make things more complicated, half of it is an American restricted airspace and half of it is a Canadian restricted airspace. So
you weren't allowed to cross over into the Canadian restricted airspace.
Well, I was organizing it with the FAA, and they have jurisdiction over the American airspace. So they said, we can talk to Transport Canada, but they'll have to do all the stuff that we did and probably more. And then we'd have to coordinate with them. It just adds a whole another layer of variables.
Yeah.
So he said, it'd be easier if you could just stay in American airspace and then we don't have to worry about Canada at all. And I was like, okay, I can do that. There's like a narrow, over Horseshoe Falls, there was like a narrow strip on the next to the shore that we had to zip through every lap. But other than that, like it was pretty easy to stay on the American side of the shore, because the border is basically in the middle of the water. So we stayed in American airspace at all times, and we did it within they were like, you have from like this time to this time to have free reign over the space. So it was like, what, a half an hour, an hour?
I think we had a half hour.
Yeah, it was like a half hour. So we hit our half hour window. And then we
were actually like kind of done before the 30 minutes.
Yeah, half hour is a long time.
It is a long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a long time flying in Dead Man's Curve.
Yep. I wasn't thinking about that because the door was off. I had 2 cameras.
Yeah,
I was trying to shoot a video and shoot photos. I had a lot to think about.
I was like, oh,
and
yeah.
I was scared shitless.
I was like, by the way, Becky, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Don't fuck it up, is what you said.
Is that what I said?
Yeah. You'll never get this opportunity ever again.
Exactly.
A quote exactly from the video.
There you go. And you nailed it. Got all the footage you needed.
Thanks.
So after we had the flight, someone called, and I think it was someone from the Canadian side complaining. And I think.
Oh no.
Which camera?
A7S III, the main baby.
Do we have like a dun 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 dun? All right, so as Becky's swapping the battery in that camera, I will continue the story for sake of time. So I got a call from the FAA saying, yeah, there was a complaint filed against you. Someone called, and I think that they said it was one of the tour operators on the Canadian side, I want to say. And I think this guy felt like this was like his airspace. Like they didn't really say that.
Major eye roll.
I know, but it was like, he was kind of like, no one else is allowed in this airspace except for us, we're the tour operators. It's like,
your tours are shut down.
It's like, dude, of COVID. The whole airspace is like, you guys aren't even flying because everything's shut down for COVID. Like, what do you care?
He was probably mad because he couldn't.
I think this guy got butthurt over it, and he felt like, how dare this person? It's like, get Ben, man. Like, this is ridiculous.
Get out of here.
So anyway, the person, the contact at FAA basically just said, look, I'm just calling to make sure that we did everything as we agreed upon. You stayed in American airspace, and it was during...
don't you worry. We have all the footage.
Exactly, yeah. And it was done in the window that we decided on to make sure that we again, dotted all our I's.
We've got 4 angles.
Exactly. Which of the 4 camera angles would you like to verify with?
Would you like me to sync them all up and just send you one multicam Premiere Pro sequence?
He was like, what? Anyway, so that was a good experience. And it all, again, happened because of
the phone call.
Phone calls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Phone, man. It's an underutilized tool in this day and age.
Yeah.
Underutilized tool, man.
I'm glad that you are the one who's using the tool. Mm-hmm. And I could just be the tool and not call anybody. How did you know it was that one? It's not even labeled.
Nailed it.
Wait. You know what I forgot to press for when I had my story about leaving the message?
Huh.
Damn it.
Perfect. The
what
story
a wasted opportunity. This is the story song.
Yeah. You really messed that one up, Peckham. All right. Perfect.
Sad tromboner.
I know.
Never gets old.
Yeah. So that's how we basically figure out all of the all of our off-airport landings.
Chris, to recap, Chris creeps on the internet. He stalks people, finds their phone numbers, finds their property size, cold calls them, and asks to land on their property. And I would say 7 out of 10 times people say yes.
Yeah, we did it for Azure Valley too. Remember we went to flying helicopters to fly drones?
Oh yeah, and do you remember when we
link to that video in the description where we flew helicopters to fly drones at Azure Valley?
Yeah, and you also did it for Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen, yeah.
In fact, we flew there this weekend. My parents are in town for a visit.
Was that yesterday?
Yesterday. And we flew there and landed. So you called them in 2019, the first time we went. And they said, yeah, no problem. You can land. Show up whenever.
Yep.
You don't have to tell me, just whatever.
Yeah, he just said, yeah. I was like, I can text you anytime. He's like, nope, just show up. Just use it whenever you want. Don't even have to let me know.
Yeah. So
I'm like, okay.
So cool. So he met us there.
And this is Watkins Glen is one of the nicest
so pretty
state parks in New York State, in my opinion.
Yes, it's one of the nicest I've seen in this area.
It's like this picture like Lord of the Rings. It's like these like waterfalls down into this gorge, and there's like these beautiful walking paths.
Leave a picture in the show notes if you want to see it.
And
BeckyandChris.com/podcast episode 29.
You can actually walk behind the waterfalls. And I think any kid who grew up on Legend of Zelda like me, there's something magical about being behind a waterfall.
It's epic. But unfortunately, when we went this time, it was closed for the winter because it was dangerous. I guess it's so wet down there. It gets icy. Anyway, so last year you called this guy.
So this field is like borders the park. And I'm like, so I just basically looked on the aerial maps, like, okay, I'm looking for, because there's a lot of farmland out there, looking for fields that look like they'd be amenable to land in that are bordering the park. They could easily just get to the park. Because again, can't land in the park land.
Yeah. So dude came out last year and met you.
Yeah. He had his quad and he just came up to see what it was all about.
Yeah. And so yesterday you texted him anyway, just to say, yo, we're still coming. Like, you didn't hear back, so we just showed up because he said show up.
He said show up, but I said, out of courtesy, I texted him to say, hey, we're planning on landing tomorrow, just to let you know, out of courtesy.
Yeah. So we show up about 2:00, and as we're landing, we spot somebody up in the hunting stand.
In the tree stand. Yeah, and I was like, oh my God.
We're fucking up this person's hunt.
I ruined their hunt. Oh my God. And then there's two people there, and I was like, and then you started going like, oh my God, they have guns. I'm like, yes, Becky, they're hunting. And then you thought you were going to get shot.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I would never show up to somebody's place unless I heard back from them. But dude, I know he said whatever, and you're much more ballsy than I am. Anyway, they're super nice. It was Mrs.
So it was wife that was out hunting and her brother.
Okay.
And they were really nice.
They were so nice.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know you were hunting. I didn't mean to like scare all the deer away or whatever.
I texted him yesterday or whatever today, in the morning or something.
Yeah. She's like, oh, he's not going to answer that. He doesn't answer his phone. Here's my number. If you ever want to just get in contact with me, here's my number. I was like, okay, great. Nice. Yeah. So she's like, it was too windy anyway today. So anyway, they were fine. They was like, she's like, it gives us an excuse to go in. It's getting cold now anyway. So they were nice about it.
Yeah.
But we landed there. And then we were hoping to go see the gorge, but of course those trails were closed.
Yeah, unfortunately. But it's a great spot. We're gonna have to go back again next summer or spring and hopefully get my parents down there again. But
so I've got a whole
you got a whole list
of like places around here. Just like a whole like
random people
repository of random people on my phone, like who have given us permission to land places.
Yeah.
And all a bunch of like custom waypoints on ForeFlight.
I forgot that you had the Azure Valley one. You also had one in Bristol Harbor that we used to go to, but it was like a restaurant. I think we actually made a video with Chris and Lizzie, Heli Pancakes. Mm-hmm. We used to go to this resort restaurant place, and they'd let us land in there.
It was a golf resort.
Yeah.
And then they allowed us.
They had a restaurant.
They put out their cones. The guy from the pro shop used to come out and put cones. I just text him, and he put cones out in the parking lot
and let us line in the parking lot.
Yeah, rope off a spot for us to land, and we just land, go in, have breakfast, have brunch, whatever.
So over the pandemic, we texted them to say, hey, are you open for brunch? They're like, can we come
Do you have any like outdoor seating that we could eat it, at it? And they're like, oh, you didn't hear. Yeah, we tore the restaurant down. We tore the
bulldozed it to the ground.
Bulldozed everything, like the golf course, all like the chalets. They're overlooking the water.
We were like, no.
The clubhouse, the restaurant, everything gone.
We loved going there. It was so cool. Yeah, and they had great lemon ricotta pancakes.
Oh, they were great. Yeah, that was one of my favorite spots.
Me
but
too.
We got a couple places. We got another restaurant now on the coast on Lake Erie.
Yeah, now that we're allowed to cross the border again. It's a bit of a hassle now with COVID tests and stuff, but once that stuff settles down a bit, we've got a couple of places in Niagara on the Lake that we can go as well.
Yep.
Which is fun.
couple wineries, even though neither one of us drink.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's fun to have those options when our parents come to visit because our parents are into like drinking wine and stuff. And, you know, you always want to go somewhere, but sometimes, you know, a big day long or overnight excursion isn't really in the books, whether it's because of weather or because of time off, or maybe that type of adventure isn't something that we want to do.
Right.
But there still wants to be some sort of like little day thing, because when we go on these like helicopter things, like it doesn't matter if we're going to Niagara on the Lake to go to a winery or a restaurant. It takes a very long, like it's a process. It's like your whole day is taken up by the event, because, okay, you might be flying 20 minutes or 30 minutes up the thing, but okay, you have to like go to the hangar. We have to do the DI. Do we need to pack a lunch? And we get everybody in and ready. And then by the time you go, you eat, you do whatever. It's like a nice few hours. Like I believe when you went up to fly with Peter at that time, when you guys made a video together, you were like, yo, like, do you want to hang out? And he was like, yeah. And you were like, it's going to be a full day because flying takes the full day. It doesn't matter where you go. It's like you guys you picked him up. You flew to a restaurant, you landed off airport, and then went back, and it was the entire day.
Yeah, it was a decent chunk of time.
Yeah.
Because I flew because that trip, I was up doing my night rating.
Yeah.
In Waterloo with Great Lakes Helicopter. And then the next morning I woke up and I flew over I flew westward, and then...
No, you left from Buffalo.
Did I?
Yep. You said, here's my weekend bucket list. And you were in the hangar and you packed it up.
No.
Watch the video. I
did my night hours.
After probably.
No, I didn't, because I came right home.
There's a time lapse of you going from Buffalo Airport to Billy Bishop. And then you met up with Potato Jet and Maddie and rode your one wheel on the truck.
Yep.
I edited
and then
this video.
I went to Waterloo. Did my night hours, and then the next day,
in between you did your night hours.
The next day, I flew over, picked up Pete.
Yeah,
we went to Orillia Airport. Then we went up into random Crown Land somewhere, had lunch on a picnic, ate our sandwiches.
Right.
Then flew back down, dropped him off next to his truck.
Right.
Hot unloaded him. Yeah. And then just flew off.
And left. Yes, that's right.
And then came home.
I'm still so sad I missed that. That lunch on the Rock looked so nice.
It was very lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a lovely time.
Yeah.
It was a fun excursion.
Yeah, you had a lot of fun.
I did.
Without me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so that's how things happen by column. And then we ended up full circle with Pete. We started this podcast with a story about Pete.
Oh, yeah, we did start about.
So, moral of the story. Stop
Peter.
being afraid to call people.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something about Peter.
Moral of the story, Peter.
I don't know. Moral of the story.
You're like struggling to stay awake here. So
you know what I'm struggling?
Nothing puts her to sleep more than helicopters. This is like the episode when we did a podcast on graphic design. No, interior design.
You fell asleep.
And it was like, oh my God, this is so long.
It was like pulling teeth trying to get Chris to participate. You know why I'm tired? It's not about helicopters. It's because yesterday we flew to the gorge. That was closed. You just farted.
I did not. There's no evidence of that.
I could hear it.
There's no evidence of that.
I guarantee you could hear it. We flew to the gorge to shoot a video for a sponsored video that we're doing. And the gorge line was closed, and he's Dutch oven. That's fantastic.
I'm sure there's another name for that.
Dutch oven.
That's when you pull the sheets over.
Smelling your own farts.
When you that's specifically referring to the bed sheets.
Yeah, but when you fart and you put in your sweatsuit and you sniff it underneath your shirt.
I don't think that's considered a Dutch oven, but
we're gonna look it up after.
Okay.
Can I finish my story?
Yes,
because this is a full circle. Why I'm tired. Okay. We went to the gorge. The gorge was closed.
Yes.
We tried to film a video. It was an epic failure.
Yes, it was.
This morning I had a sponsored video going up, and so I was stressing about that because there was a mistake and it was like a big thing. We had to re-export and do all the stuff. And then we had to go out to a different location to reshoot the video.
That we're supposed to do yesterday.
That was a fail. And so we went out today in the rain. It was cold.
It was.
And we shot the video. And then we came in and we just had a feed of steak. And so what time is it now? It's 9:30. I'm tired, and Mom's here. Mom and Dad are here, but Mom baked a cherry cake, and I can smell it.
Okay.
And all I want to do is just like wear this jogging suit and eat cherry cake in front of the television underneath the heated blanket and fall asleep on the couch.
I think that sounds like an excellent plan.
We're going to go eat some cherry cake and fall asleep in our tuxedos. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tuxedo Time. Did you have anything else to add?
I mean, I could talk about helicopters forever. Should we talk about criteria of off-airport landings? Things we're looking for? Maybe we'll save it for another episode. The look on your face, you're just like,
we're done. I was getting ready to Google what. Well, if you want to talk about that, I can like look up what it is when you smell your own farts in your sweater.
No, we're gonna end it here.
Okay.
See you next one. Thank
you so much for watching, listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.